The first time ever I heard about the Faroe Islands wasn't from travel blogs. It all started after a football match, Ukraine versus the Faroe Islands, back in 2007. I remember the commentator saying something like, "Today, Ukraine is playing against teachers, fishermen and electricians." I looked up that country in the encyclopedia on CD-ROM that I had at that time. Yes, we had encyclopedias on CD-ROM at the time when I was a kid. And that's where I found a photo of this waterfall. I guess it's stuck there forever. 10 years later, we went to the Faroe Islands with my wife, a place I dreamed about since childhood. Back in 2018, we really wanted to visit New York actually, but our visa application was denied. Our travel agent told us to go somewhere else far enough away to prove to the American embassy that we truly love to travel and aren't planning to emigrate. So that's what we decided to do. And we still haven't made it to America yet. Back then I was shooting digital. I had Canon 6D, 70-40mm lens and 70-200mm lens f4, and my wife also used a film Canon. We were so inspired by photos we took there on Faroe Islands that we even thought about putting like an exhibition in our hometown. I mean, for real, we literally printed them. But COVID ruined all that plans. And recently I remembered these photos and today I want to share them with you. These are photos from 2017 and most of the footage will be just photos since we weren't planning to make a vlog back then. Let's go to the Faroe Islands. Yes, this is me 9 years ago, fresh and no anxiety me. The Faroe Islands have 18 islands, so using buses wasn't even an option. 6 months before the trip, I got my driver license and learned to drive just enough to pass the exam, which basically meant I had zero real-world experience. But honestly, the Faroes are a great place for a first road trip. Sure, there are some serpentines and sometimes roads are very narrow, but the traffic is pretty light. With my level of driving experience, only one company agreed to rent a car to us, and we found the keys in the glove compartment. Right next to the airport is our first stop, Lake Sørvágsvötn. Lake Sørvágsvötn. The route to the famous cliff viewpoint is pretty flat and simple. And if you, like us, you arrive early in the morning, you'll definitely have enough energy for this first walk. Plus, you can watch planes land, which somehow feels extra dramatic with all the mountains around. The view from the cliff is unbelievable and there aren't many people around. Again, it's 2017. And from here, the lake looks like it's floating above the ocean. One of those classic Faroese illusions. This floating effect was mind-blowing. I remember when I first saw it, I thought maybe it's like some kind of magic. I don't know, like the laws of physics are not working here because the lake was like kind of hovering in the air. However, to truly experience this effect, I recommend going when it's cloudy, because the sunlight slightly ruins this effect. By the way, locals from two neighboring villages still can't agree on this name that I couldn't say previously. Yeah? One side calls it Sørvágsvötn and the other calls it Latisvatn. But the one thing that they can agree on is charging people to walk here. Today you have to pay to hike this trail, but back in 2017 it was still free. Thanks to Instagram, this place has become incredibly popular and the land around the trail is private, which is fairly common in the Faroes. It was our first trip to a place with a climate like this, so the wind pretty much blew the soul out of us. After we decided to head back home to the island located right in the center of the Faroes, Fuglafjørður. We decided to stay in a small village to have more time surrounded by nature, and this place is right in the middle of all the islands that they have in Faroe. And in fact, from here you can get pretty much anywhere within an hour. On each day of the trip, we had big plans written out. However, this was our first time in a climate like this again, and we hadn't really taken the weather into account. The thing is, the weather on the Faroes is more or less the same all year around because of the warmth of North Atlantic current, and it keeps the islands mild, wet, windy, stormy, and unpredictable. It's like 4 seasons per hour, literally. That morning a massive storm hit the islands and we stayed home for most of the morning. And honestly, I'm grateful the storm didn't happen the day before, otherwise we might not have arrived at all. But staying in the house turned out to be incredibly cozy. We baked sweet potatoes in the oven, the ones we brought from Copenhagen, because we assumed that'd be pretty expensive or we can't buy it here at all. And yeah, it's not true. They have plenty of fruits, vegetables, whatever on Faroe Islands. And then we found a VHS player in the house and a tape of The Day After Tomorrow, and it was a perfect film to watch when you're sitting on a tiny island and a giant cinematic wave about to wipe out the entire continent. Actually, I feared these waves when I was in Faroe Islands, because I thought maybe it would be another gigantic wave and it would be impossible to go from it anywhere because we are like in the middle of Atlantic. By the afternoon, the rain slowed down. The wind unfortunately didn't, but it was fine. So we drove to the large cascading waterfall in the middle of the Faroe Islands.
This is the tallest waterfall on the planet.
Alright, so maybe it's not the biggest one on Faroe Islands, but for us it was big and it was cascading, and most importantly, it's just a 1-minute walk from the parking lot. When we arrived, I noticed that you could actually walk all the way up to the waterfall and stand almost directly under it. So, of course, I went closer to check it out, and I was totally dry except for my Gore-Tex shoes, because all the water from my pants decided to travel straight into my boots. Beautiful engineering. And then it got dark pretty soon, rainy, windy, the classic Faroe Islands combo, so we headed back home. Okay, so day 3 greeted us with massive wind and almost no rain. We started with a drive to Gjógv. We stopped by a cute little waterfall on the way. Honestly, on the Faroes, they come in every 500 meters mode. At this point, you start experiencing a kind of emotional inflation, because in the first 2 days you stop everywhere, you photograph every stream and every rock. But by the day 3 or 4, waterfalls start competing with each other for attention, and your memory card is almost full, and you stop stopping. Gjógv is a beautiful village, and its name literally says it all. Gjógv means gorge. It was a natural harbor where boats could hide from storms, carved straight into the coastline by the ocean. Here you'll find the gorge itself, a century-old church, a memorial to local fishermen, and a very cool rocky beach. There were also several hiking trails around the cliffs, but we had other plans for this day. On the way we saw football fields, probably the same ones where local players train, hidden between the mountains, and I can't imagine playing here. If you miss the ball, it probably ends up in the ocean. Our plan for the rest of the day was to take a helicopter ride. Here the helicopter works like a bus. It flies between the islands, and back then it cost around $20. Everyone recommends using it to fly to the Puffin Island, Mykines, but in October there were exactly 0 puffins, so we just wanted to fly for fun to the airport and to go back to our car. We arrived at the helipad and learned that all flights were cancelled because of the weather. Bad weather on the Faroes never happens. For some reason, we weren't even disappointed. We decided, okay, it's just small change to our plans, and decided to drive into Tórshavn to see the capital. But once we got there, we quickly realized that we didn't come here for cities, we came for the nature. So we left almost immediately and kept driving toward Múlafossur, the waterfall we were hoping to catch at sunset. After checking the time and seeing we'd make it before sunset, we headed straight to the waterfall. Gásadalur is a remote village. The first tunnel connecting Gásadalur to the rest of the islands was built only in 2004. And through those narrow tunnels, where at one point we even met a person running straight toward us, we finally reached the waterfall. On the Faroe Islands, villages were usually built wherever you had flat land for farming, access to fresh water, and at least some protection from the wind. Gásadalur sits in exactly that kind of natural bowl between the cliffs, an ideal place for farm life and completely cut off from the rest of the islands. Gásadalur has been here since the Viking Age, around the 10th century. The village has no natural harbor and it's surrounded by steep cliffs. Even arriving by boat was difficult due to the waves and the rough coastline. So the only reliable way to reach it was by hiking over the mountains. And even today, you can still hike the old route over the mountains, just like the locals did 100 years ago. When it comes to nature, it's not just the place that matters, it's also the moment you are there. At midday, the sun usually hits everything so harshly that it becomes harder to really enjoy the thing, but this time we were lucky. We arrived right for the sunset, and the mix of sun and clouds kept changing the entire landscape in front of us. One moment everything was yellow, then blue, then suddenly pink, and at some point the wind became so strong. Honestly, you can't really tell from the photos how cold it actually was there. Yes, it looks magical, but standing there in real life was super freezing. So if you ever visit, dress appropriately and bring a thermos with you. And at some point the wind became so strong that it started blowing the waterfall backwards, straight toward to the village. When we were completely frozen, we finally headed home, and the memories stayed with us forever, and the moon lit the way back. On our last full day, my wife wasn't feeling well, so I went exploring on my own. First, I just drove wherever the road looked interesting, turning left to right purely on instinct and whatever song was playing. These tiny winding roads lead you to the villages with hundreds of people or to a single house in the middle of nowhere. Waterfalls are everywhere, like the islands are trying to overshare. My goal for the day was Saksun, a village with a black sand beach inside a lagoon. I had zero expectations, just driving with music and vibes. And today there is an entrance fee, payable by card, but back in 2017 again, it was free. The coolest thing about this place is the tide, but I had absolutely no idea about that yet. Around 1 p.m. the tide had just started rising, but I didn't realize how dramatically this lagoon transforms with water. But honestly, this place is tied to a completely different discovery for me, the kind that changed how you look at your own life. There were almost no people in the lagoon, and from time to time the rain would suddenly appear, and at some point I looked up and saw a hiker on the mountain. I was shocked. I didn't see any trails there, and to be honest, I'm sometimes hesitant to go hiking alone in the weather like this, so I thought, wow, this guy is hardcore. But then I saw another person, and then another person, and then I saw the sheep casually walking on the hills. Faroese sheep are always just living their best life, I guess, with all that grass that they have. Turns out these weren't hardcore hikers at all, they were shepherds herding sheep back into the stables with dogs, and I sat there for almost an hour watching them work. Just imagine their life on remote islands in endless rain, guiding sheep through the mountains every day. And then I tried to go back again, and surprise, the water had come in behind me too. My shoes were still wet from the day before, so this time I wore sneakers that I wrapped in AliExpress plastic bags. And did it help? No. Did I get wet? Absolutely yes. But the present there at that time, it was like amazing vibes, and trying to imagine those people who are like doing their job every day and their life look like this. Yeah, it was kind of super cool that I still remembering it, and once I feel a little bit sad or depressed, I just keep reminding myself that yeah, actually you need to go to Faroe Islands and to experience this again. On my way back, I stopped again at the big cascading waterfall, Fossá, and then drove home. So this is pretty much it. We went back to Copenhagen and then we went back home. I hope you enjoyed the photos and I hope you enjoyed this journey, and I hope one day you decide to choose Faroe Islands instead of Iceland or whatever other directions that you can have in this road. Subscribe and see you in the next videos.